Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Flop Warning. It's a Women's Wednesday edition of the show, and it's the final show of the semester. So we kind of talked about it. We're calling this like the final flop. Luke, can you do the thing that you did when we said final flop?
You gotta
Yeah. I'll give you some room. Yeah.
Contact.
Here we go.
I need contact.
Okay. All right.
Where am I getting the contact?
I'll bump it.
Was that
That was beautiful. That was an amazing flop.
Flagrant two. Can't come out.
Well, what a ride. What a ride it has been. Big shout out to all the students who have worked so incredibly hard to bring this pod to life, as well as the students working on Make It Take It in the studio right next door to us. Gail and Clavio, of course, for putting this class together and making it all possible. We really appreciate all the opportunities that you've given us. But with that, we still have another show on tap today, fellas. So I'm joined by Zion Brown, Luke Donovan, Owen Graham, our producer for the day. Gentlemen, we got a lot to get into. So I think the biggest thing right now that we can jump into is the transfer portal, because there's so many big names that have entered it. Obviously, like, it's kind of flown under the radar a little bit, but there's a lot. Like, it should be talked about more because there are a lot of playmakers in the women's transfer portal right now.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a lot of them left in the draft, but there is equally as much talent in the transfer portal right now. If you formed a transfer portal team, they would be a top 5 team in college basketball, I think. Is a fair statement to say. There's a plenty of talent out there. And I'm going to start it off with Charlize Leger-Walker, the 5'10" senior from New Zealand, a little broad player. She was at Washington State for her college career so far. Not sure where she's going to end up, but she has been a beast, averaged over 15 points in all but one of her seasons so far with the Cougars. She's a great player, really talented with the ball in her hands, above 80% from the free throw stripe. It's going to be interesting to see where she can go and if she joins maybe another player in a dynamic backcourt to really boost their team going forward.
Yeah, that's a good one. And I think we're seeing a lot of these. It's unfortunate. I hate it because of how much we talked about the Pac-12 this year. We're seeing all those players from Pac-12 schools either they're like Leger-Walker, where they don't want to go play in the Mountain West. Is it the Mountain West or the West Coast? I was getting confused. Where are they going?
I feel like it's the WCC.
I think it's
I think it was.
You don't want to go play in the West Coast Conference, which, no offense, but it is a step down. or you have players like the one I'm about to mention who don't want to play in the ACC and travel all the way back and forth the country every week. So with that, I'll go ahead and say my first player that stands out to me, it's Kiki Iriafen. I mean, you talk about somebody that just made a huge jump this year. She went from 6.7 points a game as a sophomore to 19.4 points and 11 boards, averaging a double-double with Cameron Brink in the front court with you. Like, that means there's less rebounds to get, and she was still able to get 11 a game. She was incredible all year long, watching her and Brink operate, those kind of twin towers. She's one of the best players in the Pac-12, and right now she's in the transfer portal. I think between the Stanford moving on to the ACC and, of course, Tara Vanderbilt stepping down and finally retiring, I think she just wanted to try something new. So I don't know where she's going, but like whoever gets her is getting an automatic double-double, nearly a 20 and 10 type of player. And I'm really interested to see where she goes, because that's the type of move that can change the college basketball season. If she goes somewhere and it can really just change how good a team is, if they maybe can be a national championship type of contender. And
I'll also throw out my first pick, which is number one, according to this article, at least that we're looking at on ESPN, shout out, but Georgia Amoore. And this is a woman that was vital to the Virginia Tech Hokies. She committed, well, first of all, she entered, then she committed to Kentucky, and she is to follow Brooks, which was no surprise after 4 years together at Blacksburg. Brooks is looking to kind of rebuild that Wildcats program. Amoore really was one of those that stepped up, especially when Liz Kitley went down for this VT team in the tournament. She's such a phenomenal player. She had an ACC leading 6.8 assists this season. She averaged 18.6. So you've got a potential double-double threat there with you. You've got a leader. You've got a player that can also score, and on top of that, dish it out and get it to playmakers. And that's exactly what Kentucky needs if they want to really build that up. But really, really phenomenal and special player. I feel bad for this Hokies team because they just got gutted. You know, they lose their coach, and then on top of that, you lose two of your playmakers. Liz Kitley obviously has done more transfers, so they've got some rebuilding work to do.
Yeah, but that's the new way college basketball is. If you lose the coach, players are going to follow that coach, especially when you're a very good team. And Virginia Tech was obviously Kitley's gone, and then with Amore going to Kentucky now following the coach, it's going to be hard for Virginia Tech to recover from this, but that's kind of the new landscape. Coaches are so important today to be able to retain players and bring players in the transfer portal. Great pick there. She's going to be great at Kentucky.
Yeah, Luke, move on to your number 2 in the transfer portal.
I got to go with Reagan Beers. She is absolutely phenomenal out there at Oregon State, paired up with Talia Van Olhoffen last year, who's another member in the transfer portal, but she was the scoring leader for this team, 66.4% from the field. How about that? Top number 1 in women's basketball this year, averaged a double-double as well. Averaged over a block and a steal a game. Not enough you can say about her. She's going to be great. I've heard she might go to LSU. She might go to UConn. I have no idea, but she's a great player. Plenty of eligibility left as just a sophomore, 6'4". She's going to be an exciting player to watch in the future because she has a couple years left before she can go to the WNBA.
Yeah, talk about a walking mismatch, and that is exactly what Reagan Beers is. It's if she gets positioning on you, it's like you better just start walking down the other end because it's a 2 point for whatever team she's going to be.
Well, and Zion, we were talking before we went on the pod. You had a chance to meet her and her family on a trip.
Yeah, when we were in Albany, woke up one day, went to breakfast, and the whole Beers family was sitting there eating. And I was like, oh, my goodness, this is a large group of human beings. And it made perfect sense why she's a basketball player and so good at it because it was in her genes. I think they were profiled a little bit during that weekend on like ESPN. Like I think Holly Rowe had talked to the family sometime that weekend, and just her dad and her 2 brothers and her sister, just a cool family to kind of see. I briefly just said hi as we were in line, but yeah, they are large humans. So and so is she, and she's going to be great wherever she goes. I'm going to go to one that has already been decided where they're going in the portal, and that's Lucy Olson. She'll be heading from Villanova to Iowa, the quote-unquote Caitlin Clark replacement. Obviously, she
that's big shoes to fill. Yeah.
I mean, and I know the expectations aren't for her to be Caitlin Clark. It's for her to be really good again, and then also for a jump to be made. Why am I blanking on her name right now? Down low with Hannah Stokey. I was like, who am I talking about? With Hannah Stokey, between those two, kind of carrying that load together. But you look what Olsen did last year at Villanova, 23 a game. She didn't shoot the ball very well from 3, only 29%, but she got up her shots, 5 rebounds, 4 assists too, and she's a really good player. And I'm interested to see because Lisa Bluder's offense, even with or without Clark, Bluder's a really strong offensive coach. She has been for years. So I really want to see how she utilizes Olsen and kind of moves off I think we talked about it earlier this year, like the heliocentric where every single thing wants to do Clark, and now it could be more of a balanced scoring attack and still using Olsen as your leading scorer, but you're not necessarily running every single play and action through her.
Yeah, I mean, she was the 3rd leading scorer this season, so I'm excited to see when she is still going to be the focal point of this Iowa offense, but what she can do more so as a playmaker and a creator there with the Hawkeyes. I think you were nail on the hammer on the nail with that point, and seeing how the coach can really fit that offensive scheme in, because obviously Caitlin Clark, one of the best women's basketball player of all time, Lucy Olson, very good, but not obviously Caitlin Clark.
But definitely a big get for the Hawkeyes who lose that generational talent. Yes, absolutely. Yes. My number 2, I got to go with Tamia Gardner. She's the 6'3" forward sophomore that transferred out of Oregon State. And this is the highest rated high school player that Corvallis has ever gotten, and they have to say goodbye to her. She was a McDonald's All-American out of Utah. She only played 15 games as a freshman because she suffered some injuries in there, but she had a really, really great sophomore season. She won the Pac-12's sixth player of the year, and she shot 39.5% from 3 as a sophomore. That's those are phenomenal numbers from three. And in a game today where the 3-point shot is so valued, she is very, very critical. I think she's going to be a big get for whichever team lands Gardner. And she also still has 2 years left of eligibility transferring out of Oregon State. Speaking of the Pac-12 exodus,
Right.
there's another one.
Casualty, right? Like,
Yep.
like it just stinks. Like this Oregon State team will probably not be very good next year.
Mhm.
This team just made the Elite Eight, and they
Mhm.
were young. They could have brought everybody back, but because these women do not want to play in the wet, right? Like we're talking about players like especially Beers and Tamia Gardner that are maybe have a WNBA potential and prospects, and they're like, okay, as great as it was to play here, we're not going to grow and get to where we want to be by playing, once again, no offense, but by playing in the West Coast Conference.
Mhm.
And it just stinks because if you have an Elite Eight team that was as young as Oregon State was, you're thinking, oh man, we get this team for another year or two, and maybe we can make the Final Four, and who knows, maybe we can win it all. And now it's just all that is gone. It really sucks.
Yeah, it really, really does. And that's why loyalty is so valued, but it's so rare nowadays, right? Like our good pal and friend Elias was talking a couple podcasts ago about how the Indiana State team just got absolutely gutted, right? And they had a chance to really build something special there.
And in this case, it's like I don't even know who to blame for the loyalty aspect, but it's like their athletic department wasn't right because they signed up to play in the Pac-12. It is what it is. They signed up to play in the Pac-12, not in the WCC. So it's like, and they kind of got left out, I guess. So I'm not gonna blame Oregon State the way I would if it was like UCLA or something or Stanford in that case. But they were the ones that got left out. But it's just really unfortunate.
Yeah, Luke, move to your third and final pick.
All right,
transfers.
I'm going to go to the Ivy League. We've seen some Ivy League transfers work out well. Caitlin Chen, the Princeton point guard. She's a great two-way player, averaged just shy of 16 points a game, 5 assists there. We've seen these Ivy League transfers work. I think she is a no-nonsense plug-in. Easy, very high floor. Probably not the highest ceiling, but she's going to be a great player wherever she goes. I think she's going to be a big addition. Doesn't turn the ball over a lot. Can score, can defend, can pass, gets a couple rebounds here and there, can get triple doubles sometimes. I think she is a great player that someone will very much enjoy to handle the ball for the team.
Zion, you're your third and final pick.
I'm going with Deja Kelly, who is taking off from North Carolina. She was kind of a streaky player. Like, look at the percentages, and they're not great on her, but she's averaged over 16 a game for the last 3 years. Has been in double figures in all 4 of her college years, and North Carolina has made the tournament with her all 4 seasons. And I'm taking this straight. I didn't actually realize this, but I'm taking this straight from the ESPN article I'm looking at here. They missed 5 of the 6 tournaments before she got there. So, like, she obviously was a difference maker. This is a Charlie Cream article. She obviously was a difference maker at North Carolina, and I'm interested to see how much of a difference she can make at a new school going forward. I think, I watched her play when she came here to IU. I guess that was last season, right? It was that ACC Big Ten Challenge when that was still a thing. I watched her play here, and it was like IU won the game, but she impressed me, and she always impressed me whenever I saw North Carolina play. They had some good seasons under her, so I really want to see if she can, in her final college season, kind of make some noise and make some damage wherever she goes.
Well, speaking of a new player that has a chance to make a really big impact on a new team, a player that really kind of needs a fresh start is Janiah Barker, a 6'4" forward sophomore that transferred from Texas A&M. She is the highest rated recruit that the Aggies have had, and she's leaving College Station. Rated as the number 3 prospect in 2022, according to Hoop Girls, but she's really kind of she hasn't really found her footing yet fully. She averaged 12.5 points, 6.8 rebounds last season. She has the size and the skill to really be a big impact player for the team that does pick her up, but she hasn't really found that consistency yet. And, a lot of times, you can be an amazingly talented player and it just not be the right fit, right? The team's just not the right fit. The play style is not the right fit. The coach is not the right fit. But in this situation, I'm really hoping that Barker finds a better fit in a better school wherever she ends up landing. She's going to play somewhere because she's awesome. But really hoping that wherever that is, it's a much better fit for her and she can start really putting up big numbers that she's capable of.
Yeah, and certainly if you look at her career with the Aggies, she was hurt a lot as a freshman. So coming off that injury in her sophomore year, trying to get back into the rhythm as well as living up to the high expectations, being the highest rated recruit, the number 3 prospect. I think it's a great move for her, and I certainly agree. I think she will be awesome wherever she ends up.
So we'll move on to our second segment of the day and some big news that has come out. The NCAA Division I Board of Directors has ratified some transfer and NIL rule changes. So we'll kind of go down the line because they talked about a couple big things. So we got 3 big topics right now. It's the new transfer portal rules, NIL stuff, and then lastly, the women's basketball fund that they also are awaiting discussion on. So this comes from the NCAA. The Division I Council approves changes to transfer rules. So here we go. The Division I Council on Wednesday unanimously adopted a package of rule changes to allow transferring student athletes who meet certain academic eligibility requirements to be immediately eligible at their new school, regardless of whether they transferred previously. The council's action is not final until the meeting concludes Thursday and is subject to ratification by the D1 Board of Directors at its meeting later this month. If ratified, the rules would be effective immediately. Specifically, to be immediately eligible after a transfer, undergraduate students would have to have left their previous school while academically eligible and in good standing and meet progress toward degree requirements at their new school before competing. For graduate students, graduate student athletes to be eligible, they would have to earn a degree from their previous school, leave while academically eligible, and be enrolled as a full-time postgraduate student while continuing to satisfy minimum academic standards. The Deputy Athletics Director at Florida, Linda Teeler, said, with these rule changes, NCAA members continue to prioritize long-term academic success for college athletes who transfer while supporting their opportunity to compete immediately. We hope that this practical approach to transfer eligibility requirements will encourage student athletes to make well-informed decisions about transferring and the impacts such a move could have on their ability to graduate on time in their degree of choice, particularly as it relates to transferable credits. Again, this comes from ncaa.org/news. Guys, I don't know. The way that I read that quote from Teeler seems like these new rules are doing the opposite of what she is talking about. But I want to get your guys' opinion on kind of the ability now for student athletes to transfer immediately without penalty and start playing immediately, no matter how many times they have transferred previously. What do you guys think about that?
I think there's pros and cons. I think that it's becoming kind of inevitable that people are going to be able to transfer and play. I think that's just the new age that we live in. So I think you got to find a way to regulate it. And I think that making sure they're still doing the proper academics, making sure they're still completing their degrees, making sure they're fulfilling those requirements. I think it's a pretty common sense approach. You don't want people not doing school, transferring away, not doing school, transferring away. So I think you have to kind of think that people are going to be able to transfer and they're going to be able to play at some fundamental level. That's going to happen. So I don't mind if there's some requirements on the academic standpoint to make sure that they're doing that as well, because these are student athletes.
And again, real quick, want to note before I get ZB's take on it, the student athletes are expected to enter the transfer portal within their sports notification of transfer windows, pending like some, the coach leaves or some other something comes up. Extenuating circumstances. But yeah, Zion, your opinion on athletes being able to transfer as many times as they want, as long as they meet academic requirements?
Yeah, I'm with it. I'm okay with it. It's kind of that saying or that whatever the kind of motto that the NCAA has said sometimes is like, most athletes go pro and something else besides sports, right? And that's what they say, something like that.
Yeah.
It's like, I think about this all the time when I see these players that transfer a few times. I'm like, man, especially I'll be like, man, he or she, they're not, to me, going to be playing, professional like NBA, WNBA. I just kind of hope like they're going to actually graduate and have something to do when they do. Right? You know what I'm saying? So I think it's good that the NCAA is letting them transfer more than once, because I do think, things happen. That's not to say that I think athletes should just transfer willy-nilly. I hate when I see an athlete that's been at like 4 different schools. I'm just like, at some point, there's probably something wrong with you when I see that. But, things happen, and I do think they should be allowed to transfer as much as they want, whether or not I like it or not. And I do like the fact that these academic standards are hopefully actually being upheld and cared about, because like I said, not everybody's just going to be going pro, no matter what happens. So you got to make sure you have something to do after college ends.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. There are things about this that I love, and there are things about this that I hate. I mean, the things that I love, obviously, is if they're actually going to enforce the fact that they need to show progress in their degree, then I think it's great. I think it's great. Like, but I assume that if that doesn't happen, they're probably gonna withhold their ability to play immediately. I don't know for sure. Again, they're still kind of tying all these things together. I just think when I read that statement from Taylor, it was, making well-informed decisions and about the transferring and the impact such a move would have on their ability to graduate on time and their degree of choice. I don't know the way in which I'm kind of with you, Zion. The way I could see this going if it was bad and what would make me hate it is if athletes don't really continue to prioritize that and they continue to just transfer willy-nilly. I think that is a danger that has the potential to really stunt the growth of college sports after they've been taking massive strides the past few years, particularly with women's basketball. I think if you're doing just a little bit of work and then moving, or doing just a little bit of work and then moving, I think there needs to be, like you said, Luke, a regulation on both ends to make sure that progress is actually being had, that prevents the athletes from just having the superpower to move whenever they want, and not really do what they're going to school for. And so again, this is coming from a pro transfer portal guy, by the way. I really love the transfer portal, but I think there are regulations that need to be in place. Otherwise, it's just going to be chaos, and chaos is not good. So we'll move on to the second thing that they kind of talked about, which is the NIL rule changes. So effective immediately, D1 student athletes have, this is from the same article, by the way, D1 student athletes have access to additional school assistance with name, image, and likeness activities and more flexibility to transfer. The D1 board of directors decided Monday, yada, yada, yada. Schools can identify NIL opportunities and facilitate deals between student athletes and third parties. Student athletes are not obligated to accept assistance from the school and must maintain authority over the terms in their NIL agreements. Beginning August 1st, member schools will be permitted to increase NIL-related support only for student athletes who disclose their NIL arrangements. Gentlemen, what do we think?
I'll go first here.
I heard some giggles as I was listing that out.
This is so funny because that's what's been happening already.
Right. Right. They're just now deciding to acknowledge it. Kind of. They didn't even fully acknowledge it, though.
Every single Division I school, no matter how, some schools obviously have way more NIL opportunities than others, but no matter what your situation is around your program NIL, every single Division I school has been having their coaching staff or athletic department, somebody in the athletic department, tell these students, hey, you should go here and here and here to get these NIL opportunities. This has been happening. So I guess congrats to the NCAA for just acknowledging that's been happening. But this is just so funny. Now you can finally help your athletes and help them, assist them to get these NIL opportunities. This has been happening since the moment NIL.
And basically everybody's done it. Basically everybody's done it too.
Everybody has done it. It's how it works, but. Congrats, NCAA. If you want a round of applause for this, great job.
They're finally putting their big boy and big girl britches on finally, and acknowledging that it's been, like you said, Zion, happening all the time. I think the one thing that sticks out to me that motivates me is there has to be some kind of regulation on these third parties, because I'll be honest, a lot of these third party helpers with the student athletes to get these NIL opportunities, they're sketchy.
Yeah.
They are sketchy. And
a bunch of money.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they say they have the student's best interest at heart, but a lot of them don't. You know what I mean? Some of them do, but some of them don't. And I think if the school is able to get involved officially and and help them out, I think if there's a system in place that helps regulate and kind of, I don't want to say does a background check, but kind of just checks and balances to the third parties to make sure that they're actually official and they're not sketchy and they're not going to just,
scam these athletes.
Scam these athletes. Yeah, absolutely right. Same with the schools too, to make sure that they're not leveraging themselves to take advantage of the athletes either. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean it's been happening. So I mean I don't really know what to say. I think good for the NCAA to acknowledge that it's been happening. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing to have these schools involved in the NIL from like a kind of outside perspective. But in reality, the schools have already been involved, and they're the ones who care about the athletes, I would say, more than the sponsorship deals a lot of the time, because for them, it's a business transaction. For the schools, they're representing the school. They're a part of the school. They're part of the legacy of the school. They're what's going to bring in more recruits to the school. So I think, yeah, I mean, congrats to the NCAA for passing a rule that's already been happening. I think, but it's a good rule. Let the schools help the students, but I think it's up to the student athletes at the end of the day to be financially responsible, and that's a tough thing to learn. And I think if the schools can help them do that, all the power to them.
Yeah, and give them the resources to actually discern between good third parties and bad third parties. Last thing we'll talk about in terms of what the D1 board of directors has been talking about, and just kind of a bunch of meetings that they've been having. They discussed a lot of things, but this is the one that I think affects what we're talking about today the most. The board finance committee is seeking feedback on a women's basketball fund. So the board of directors finance committee will seek broad membership feedback on key questions related to the targeted distribution amount, structure, and source of funding for the women's basketball fund. Based on initial feedback, the committee is targeting an initial payout in the 2025-26 fiscal year based on performance in the 24-25 D1 women's basketball championship. To meet that goal, the group intends for the D1 membership to vote on a proposal creating the fund at the 2025 NCAA convention in January. Gentlemen, something that I'm really glad is happening, but something that probably should have happened a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always problems when you start talking about money. And I think with how the game has grown in the past few years, there probably needs to be more of it. So I think certainly it's about time. But I think, it's the same story. The NCAA is pretty slow to adapt to the current world of college athletics. And I think it seems like they're doing a decent job catching up with this board meeting. But it's probably about time. I think you're right with that.
Zion, anything to add?
I think it's great. It means, that, the NCAA is finally acknowledging and kind of ready to usher in this era of women's basketball where now the teams and conferences are getting paid for these NCAA tournament appearances and the wins, just like we see in the men's tournament. That's why even above just like the team itself, the 13 players on the team and the coaches in the men's tournament, that's why it's so great when we see those teams get upsets and whatnot and stuff like that, because it's like that means they're getting facility upgrades, or just the fact that that winning your conference tournament means you're going to the tournament. That means you're getting stuff. That means your conference is going to be upgraded and have more money to play with. And so now to see that happen on the women's side as well, it's going to be really fun to see. I'm glad that they're putting an initiative forward, and hopefully this gets passed through and finally official here in the near future.
Yeah, so we'll move on to our third segment of the day. I kind of shortened this down just a little bit because I know we're a little tight on time right now. But gentlemen, give me your top 3 players of this past season of women's college basketball outside of Caitlin Clark.
Well, we can start with the obvious. Cameron Brink. I think she's pretty clearly. I mean, she was the number 2 pick in the NBA draft. Is there much more you can really say? I think. What she did at Stanford and Vanderveers last year was great. It was a great final season for her at Stanford, and Cameron Brink's a great player, and she's going to continue to be a great player in the WNBA.
Yeah, Brink is on my list, so I don't have much to add. A really great two-way center. I think this is probably going to be on your top 3 list too, is Paige Bueckers. I mean, she was just so incredible all year long, and seeing her get UConn back to the Final Four and so close. They almost made the national championship game again, but she was never get them quite there with how good she was, and the fact that she has decided to come back for another year. I mean, she will head into next year as the best player in women's college basketball, and I hope she has another great year, another fun year to watch.
I will agree with Paige Bueckers. Cameron Brink is one of my honorable mentions. This may be a little bit of bias coming in here, so I'll preface it with that. But I'll throw out there. I mean, we'll talk about Juju Watkins. I'll just kind of intro her. I mean, geez, as a freshman, what she was able to do was ridiculous. And she's only going to get better. And I can't wait to see her refine some of those skills and kind of work on a couple of things that hindered her down the stretch in the NCAA tournament.
It's so crazy to think about, like, what is Juju Watkins going to look like in 2027 as a senior?
Yeah.
Like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Chills.
Yeah.
Chills. Pure chills. I'll throw out one that comes from the Big Ten as well. And again, a little bit of bias here, but Mackenzie Holmes.
Okay.
I mean, program's all-time leading scorer. What she did the past few years for Indiana was incredible. If you ever needed a basket, it was her, right?
Yeah.
You go to her, and even if she was having an off game, she could guarantee you to get a basket or at least be dominant down in the paint. And I hope that she succeeds in the WNBA. I really do. I don't know. You get to those latter picks in the draft, you don't really know how they're going to pan out. But I really hope she does well because she was great at Indiana, and I'm interested to see what this new Hoosiers team looks like next year without her down low. Luke.
I got to go with a person that I feel like we just haven't talked enough about on this podcast, and that's Deja Fair from Syracuse. She was third, I believe, in three-point field goals made a game. And, in the last 5 games that Syracuse played, they lost 4 of them, but she was averaging almost 26 points a game in those.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't really her fault. If she had a better supporting cast, I think Syracuse would have been a really good team. She passed Brittany Griner for 5th all-time scoring. So, obviously you had Caitlin Clark, who's now the leading scorer in college basketball. But Deja Fair, she's 4th. She's 5th now. She was very good there, averaged over 20 points a game. So I think she deserves her flowers as a player that I have at the top of women's college basketball. Didn't get enough credit on this podcast throughout the year.
Zion.
There you go. So my 3 have all been said. I had Becker, Sprink, and Watkins as my 3. Like I said about Juju Watkins, I can't even imagine what she's going to do the next 3 years. I mean, she's going to be on pace. I don't know what the exact numbers are projected is to maybe even pass Caitlin Clark's record.
Yeah.
Just 3 years later. So we'll see if she does that eventually throughout her career. Hopefully she stays healthy through it all. And my honorable mentions, Liz Kitley at Virginia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
I said it, I think 2 or 3 times here already. I just hate the fact that her career ended on the sideline. She was so good the last couple of years. Last year, of course, took them to the Final Four. This season, when she was healthy, they had moments where they looked like they could, compete with any team in the country. She's on mine, and of course, I got to give South Carolina's Camila Cardoso some love. Best player on the undefeated team. I know the numbers aren't always eye popping with her because she's sharing the rock with a lot of other talented players, but she was great. And then Hannah Hidalgo at Notre Dame also just a phenomenal freshman season, and I can't wait. She'll definitely be a top 5 player next year.
So all these players, or most of these players, moving on. Gentlemen, I want to get your thoughts on what the outlook of next year's women's college basketball world will look like. Who will be the next batch of superstars? What does a post-Tara Vanderveer world look like? Which teams are going to fall off? Which teams are going to thrive? Things like that.
I'm going to start with Texas here. They're going to be battling with the South Carolina Gamecocks for SEC supremacy, I think. They're that good.
Wow.
Madison Booker showed she was like that. They get Rory Harmon, point guard, back from her injury this year. Texas is a very good team. They have, I believe, Jordan Lee is the 9th best recruit coming in. I love this Texas team, and I think they are going to be one of the best, if not the best teams in the SEC. Unfortunately, South Carolina, you got to give them all their flowers until they lose a game in the regular season, which they haven't done in the last few seasons. So,
in a minute.
Yes, it has.
But hey, if there's a team that's going to do it, it's going to be Texas, and it's coming next year. So that's where I want to start.
Big props for the Longhorns on the Flop Warning podcast. How about that?
I'll stay on the kind of teams aspect of a team that I think could thrive here, and I'll stay with USC, who we talked about a little bit already. But I just think, of course, Juju, but I think that they continue to have great recruiting classes come in. Lindsey Gottlieb's doing a great job there. I'm hearing some rumors that a few of those names we may have mentioned in the transfer portal section are talking to USC, so maybe that's an option too. And if they get 1 or 2 of those ladies, I mean, my goodness, to add on with Juju Watkins, I just think that team is going to be a top 8, top 10 team for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I love that take. They also have a lot of good recruits, 3 recruits in the top 20, I believe. I got shelled last time when I was on here with Owen and Elias for saying that USC was going to win the Big Ten. next year. And
I mean,
that's
think-
not
I
too
don't know. They have to
far-fetched.
come in as the
I
favorite,
don't
right?
know. Yeah,
Yeah,
they are. They
that-
are. I don't know if it's
That's
going to be
not too
close.
far-fetched.
They both.
Ohio
They
State's
both
losing a
said
few. IU's obviously losing probably their two best players. Like I don't know. Iowa obviously
Illinois
is
will
losing
be
Taylor Clark,
improved.
but not that. At least I don't think.
Nebraska, Michigan, like I don't know. They said I think USC is going to be a very good team.
Yeah,
I think they
I think
probably
they're coming
might
in as
win
a
the big.
favorite.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they are. They are.
I think the biggest thing that I'm looking for, if we're kind of sticking to this kind of Big Ten path right now, is what the schedule is going to look like. I mean, my goodness, we're going to have dream matchup after dream matchup nightly and weekly, gentlemen. I can't wait personally for Indiana to play USC. I know, Zion, you and I have talked about it a couple times. I mean, man,
Please bring them here.
please.
Hey, Big Ten, we're seniors next year. This is our only chance to maybe see Juju in
Juju
person.
Watkins, yeah.
Please bring them here. That's
Yeah.
all I ask.
Please.
I think
That would be so
I think
good.
something that's really underrated that I want to see happen is how all of these players are going to handle the travel. I think that's something that isn't talked about enough. It's been mentioned a few times. There's a lot of questions about it, how they're going to handle it going from maybe California and then all the way to Rutgers 3 days later, 2 days later, whatever it is. So on the one end, the pros of seeing a lot of awesome matchup, the cons of seeing it potentially affect the players in a negative way, hoping it doesn't. I think the scheduling is going to be electric. I think the matchups are going to be awesome. And as much as I agree with you that that USC has the potential to win the Big Ten next year, that'd be awesome for them. I think it could open up just a little bit because Big Ten's tough. Like Big Ten is tough. It's going to be tough next year for anybody. So that's the biggest thing I'm looking forward to next year. Anything to add on that point?
No, you nailed it. I think it's going to be another fun year for the conference. I mean,
Mhm.
we talked about the Big Ten and Pac-12 so much this year, and now
Yeah.
two of those big Pac-12 teams that we talked about throughout the year are going to be in the Big Ten, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, it really will. So we'll flip it to a more podcast-centric segment here on the show. Gentlemen, what has been your favorite moment of this semester of podcasting?
Want to take it first?
It can be a take. It can be an experience on a podcast. It can be
I got a few. Like, wow.
yeah. It can be a person. It can be anything.
I gotta think about this one. If you got
Oh,
yours, I don't know.
I'll start with the clown noses.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
that was,
patented by
yeah,
our producer Owen Graham.
behind the camera today kind of got that rolling, and that was just so fun to see. Whenever
And then I was next in line.
when someone had to wear a clown nose, that was great. Man, I'm trying to just think of good moments. Not that there weren't some. I'm just trying to think of which ones I want to really mention.
Keegan Nickerson coming on the
Yeah,
podcast,
yeah.
really in the early stages. Like I think he was on like first, at least within the first month, if not the first couple of weeks, and that conversation with him was amazing.
I really loved like January and February was cool too, but once we got the tournament season between the conference
Yeah.
tournaments and the NCAA, because it was just like the predictions and everybody was like giving out their takes. Oh, this team's not that good. This team's gonna. I really love that part of it. Just everybody like
Mhm.
just calling their shots.
Getting fired up.
Yeah, whether they end up being right or wrong, and yeah, hot takes and all that. So yeah, those were kind of some of my favorite parts and moments of the pod.
We got. Go ahead.
I want to go back to the Purdue Tennessee game and just talking about that game because that game was so much fun to watch. Dalton Connect and Zach Edey did their thing, and then talking about that game. I feel like everybody kind of knew how that game was going to go, and it played out that way, and it was still so much fun to watch. So I think that game would certainly be one of my highlights. But then talking about Duke and Kyle Filipkowski with Elias Corey
Yeah.
has to be some of the funniest times this semester. I mean, go back and watch the clips because they're amazing.
I think a couple others that I'll throw out there. Obviously, our own Elias Corey and his Indiana State Sycamores. I mean, he
rode for them from episode 1.
Yeah.
He was a ride or die Sycamore believer.
he was their mascot man, and he was their hype man. And I think Indiana State would be lucky to have him maybe as like the hype dude on maybe not on Twitter, but like social media and different things like
They
that.
should have put him in like how teams make like those hype videos.
Yes.
Where like there's
Yes.
people talking about them, like,
Yes.
like talking. He should have been on one of those.
Absolutely.
I don't know if Indiana State even actually made one of those, but if they did, They should have put him in it.
It was one of the more fun things to talk about, podcast in and podcast out. Another couple shows that I really liked was when we were predicting the conference tournaments too. Particularly with the women's show, just going through all the different individual conference tournaments. I mean, my goodness, there were so many different things to talk about. And then I'll toss out there my really bad take that Penn State was going to beat Iowa. And 2 episodes after, when Graham wore the clown nose, I wore the clown nose. After I had just got done telling everybody that show that Owen wore the nose, I was like, kids, don't bet and don't gamble. And then like a show later, I did that again.
You were really confident.
I was.
In the Nittany Lions. I didn't understand it, but I was like,
it was a blind
what
confidence. It was a very blind confidence. But yeah, every student has made this show what it is, and shout out to all those that are listening downstairs, all of you gentlemen that are on the podcast today, Galen, Clavio, all of your guys' hard work is what made this podcast what it is. And it took an army and an awesome group of students to put this thing together. So for one final time, at least this semester officially, we move to the shot clock. And this has been our go-to segment. It's been our favorite segment of the entire semester. Owen, do you want to time us?
I got you.
All right. Owen says he's got us.
I can start here.
Okay.
Mine is kind of just building off what you just said.
Okay. There we go. All right. Let me know when you're ready, Owen.
Got 30 seconds on the clock.
All right. Count them down. Count them down.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right, I do want to thank everybody. This was a fun semester of doing these pods, both the here and there, the men's and women's shows. It was really exciting. Thanks to all. I think it was 10 of us that produced and worked on the pod together. Great job, everybody. Shout out to our seniors, of course. We will miss you. No, this was a joy. I mean, we started this, and we once we got rolling, and I think Galen said the other day when we were downstairs, once we got rolling, and it was really fun. So I appreciate everybody. I appreciate everything, and great job, guys.
Got the shot off in plenty of time. That's 1 for 1 on getting it off before the shot clock runs out. Luke, you are up. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'll go. Let's do it.
Count them down, Owen.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right, well, we could start off. I'm just going to repeat everything that he said, but then I'm going to move forward, and I'm really excited for the conference realignment. We touched on it earlier. I mean, the 4 new teams in the Big Ten, the 2 new teams in the SEC, the ACC going coast to coast now. I think it's going to be really exciting to watch. The matchups just get so much better, and this is just going to make college basketball so much better week in, week out, November to April.
Got the shot off in plenty of time. Still 2 seconds. Hey, there's the ringtone. All right, I'll bring us home. This has the potential to be one of the shortest shot clocks in history, just because I only have like a couple minute things to say other than what you guys have said. So we'll see how that goes. Count me down.
3, 2, 1, go.
So obviously just want to echo what both these gentlemen have said. Obviously all the hard work of all the students downstairs and up here, you've made this possible. Galen, thank you so much for making this a class. This has been a blast. I've learned so much about podcasting. I feel pretty confident that I could run my own someday. 2 minute things: regulate and kind of fine tune the transfer portal, please, so it doesn't go crazy. And Haley Van Lith, please pick a school. Please pick a school. That's all.
She needs to.
She needs to. It's man, like that's a prime example, man. Is like she's a great player, and I love that. Again, pro transfer portal guy here. Love that athletes can do that, but come on. Like when you're just transferring around and around and around because why? Because why?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hey, Riley didn't just get up a shot; he dunked on her.
Hey, now, let's be careful. Let's be careful with that. Really hope she finds a school though. Like she will, but I really hope she finds a place where she can really kill it.
How many years does she? Is it just
I think
this last year?
this is
her
it
last
for
year,
her.
right?
This should be it for her.
I hope she finds the success she found with the Cardinal.
I agree.
Cardinals,
Louisville Cardinals. Yeah,
yeah.
Because I don't know. I had a sneaking suspicion that potentially it wasn't going to work out the best for her at LSU.
I'll just say it, I didn't like it from the start.
Yeah,
really
yeah,
was just like,
exactly,
I don't want
exactly.
this fit,
Like
and it wasn't great.
Yeah, it wasn't great. And again, that goes back to fit. It's really important with fit for a player, and I think she's going to fit in well at whatever school she goes to. Maybe TCU, but she hasn't put pen to paper yet, according to what she said yesterday. So we'll see. We'll see, but maybe TCU, maybe somewhere else. Anyway, Zion Brown, Luke Donovan, our producer Owen Graham, thank you guys so much for coming on the pod today. Shout out again to everybody that worked so hard to make this podcast possible downstairs, those that are watching. Thank you for tuning in and listening to us talk about college basketball, a sport that we all know and love so incredibly much. Do want to say this has the potential to not be our last show of Flop Warning. Owen Graham, Elias Corey, and a couple others are planning on hopefully continuing this podcast in some fashion over the summer and potentially into the next school year. So be sure to follow our socials. Just look us up on Flop Warning. Look up Flop Warning on Twitter. Go to the IU Sports Media page on YouTube. You can find us there. And just keep updated because, we love talking about this. And why should a podcast die after a semester when it's been so successful and so good? But again, shout out to all of you guys that have listened and listened to us yell and scream and shout and talk about college basketball. It's been a blast, and I wouldn't change it for the world. This has been an amazing, amazing experience. So have an amazing day, everybody. Enjoy your Wednesday. And for those of you that are students out there, grind it out and finish strong with finals and everything else you got coming up. God bless. We'll see you next time.